Welcome back to Eerie's 8-Bit Workshop. Today we begin a brand new series, the build of a beautiful Acorn Atom clone from HackJunk.com. It's designed to go into an Acorn Atom case. Now you may be aware that there is another wonderful Acorn Atom clone out there, this one made by Chris Oddy, designed to go into an Electron case. And we will build this one, but it's not going to be in this series. Well, yes, I know what you're thinking. Another Acorn project, and at this point the Cambridge Processor Unit should probably put me on the payroll. Except they technically dissolved in 1979, so I'd settle for a nice t-shirt. But before we dive into the solder fumes and questionable design choices from the 1980s, we need to talk about where the atom came from, because Acorn didn't appear out of thin air. It grew, appropriately, from a tiny acorn. Before we get started, a quick heads up about Earies8bit.com. That's the home base for Eerie's 8-Bit Workshop. Every time a new video goes live, you'll find it posted there along with links that I share in the YouTube description. Parts, tools, GitHub projects, schematics and support files. There's also a dedicated section covering the equipment that I use on my workbench, plus gear that I've reviewed on the channel, with links if you want to check out the same tools for yourself. Using those links is an easy way for you to support the channel if you choose to do so. I'll also be opening a small shop on the site for a few surplus items, things like spare PCBs, including the project PCBs for the TI-9922, as well as the occasional vintage machine that I've decided not to keep. I'll still be selling through eBay as well, but the website lets me offer more direct pricing when possible. So if you want updates, resources, or a single place to find everything to do with the channel, head over to Earies8bit.com. So let's rewind to the Cambridge Processor Unit. CPU for short, the company that would eventually become Acorn. Long before it made home computers, it was designing fruit machine controller boards. Yes, the earliest Acorn engineers initially made their money playing the slots. And some would argue that they never really stopped gambling. They just switched to computers. In 1978, Sophie Wilson saw the MK14 from the Science of Cambridge and thought, well, that's nice, but I can do better. So, over the Easter holidays, she designed what was to later become the Acorn System 1. Now, the System 1 had a fun party trick. It was built on a Eurocard, so you could just keep sliding cards into a frame to expand it. The System 1 became the System 2, the System 3, the System 4, the System 5. A bit like Lego, but with more electricity and fewer lawsuits. The System 1 even had a cameo on Blake 7 as part of the prop for the ship's computer slave. Steve Ferber loves pointing out that while Sir Clive Sinclair bragged that the ZX80 could run a nuclear power station, the System 1 was already powering a 22nd century spacecraft. Science fiction doesn't lie, Sir Clive. And that brings us to the Acorn Atom, released in 1980. It evolved from the ideas of the System series, but bundled into a small, affordable home computer. The case, well, it was designed by Alan Boothroyd, who also styled the BBC machines later. Fun fact, the Atom case was literally built into the same case used for the System 3 keyboard. So yes, cost saving starts at home. The Atom could be bought fully assembled or as a self-assembly kit, and since we're building a clone version today, we're essentially recreating the kit building experience that people had in the 80s, minus the soldering on shag pile carpets. Sophie Wilson once described the Atom as a piece of, well, her words, not mine. But to be fair, she was working on much more advanced ideas by then. Still, the Atom matters. It set the stage for what was to come later, the BBC Model A and B designs. So that's the history, but today is not about the original Atom. It's about how the HackJunk version modernizes it, simplifies it, and removes some of the, shall we say, more adventurous engineering decisions that Acorn made. First, let's talk complexity. Here's a schematic of the original Atom. Now here's a schematic for the HackJunk board. One of these looks like the blueprint for a consumer computer, and the other one looks like it escaped from Bletchley Park. The HackJunk version dramatically reduces chip count, simplifies memory, eliminates obsolete components, fixes several design flaws without changing the soul of the machine. So let's talk about the power. The original Atom took roughly 8 to 12 volt power input and it fed it through a couple of LM340T voltage regulators. They were chunky little linear regulators that did their best impressions of toasters. This is one of my Atoms, and look at this, it's not just scorched, it's artisanally flame-kissed. Those regulators got so hot they could eventually melt solder and desolder themselves. Imagine your voltage regulators quietly ejecting themselves during a basic programming sessions before you'd had a chance to actually save it to tape. It's a bit like a computer rage quitting. Acorn eventually published a fix for this. You could remove the regulators and instead link positions LK6 and LK7 to feed the board directly from a clean 5 volt supply. Now I'd love to know why they didn't actually ship the systems like this in the first place. If you know why they chose to run it on 8 volts, please do leave a comment below. I'd love to know. The HackJunk board takes the hint. No regulators, no heat, just a 5 volt input. Problem solved, board cooled, sanity restored. The original Atom had a unique idea. One large PCB with the chips on the bottom and the keyboard switches on the top. Every time you typed, you were basically hammering directly onto the top of the chips. Over time, ICs would work themselves loose and fall out, which is not generally considered best practice in the computer engineering world. The HackJunk board wisely splits the design. ICs face up, keyboard on its own PCB, and the two connect with a ribbon cable. No more typing the RAM loose, a welcome improvement. The Acorn Atom originally used a very simple reset circuit, tau, the time function which is the product of a resistor and a capacitor. It had a 1K resistor and a 10 microfarad capacitor, which after a period of 0.01 seconds should assert the reset line. And that's it, that was the entire reset system. The same design that we saw spectacularly fail on the Auric 1, which although produced a few years later, still used the same design. At least with the Acorn Atom, when you turned it on and saw a screen full of junk, you could just press the brake switch. This was linked into the same circuit, unlike on the Auric, where it actually just asserted NMI and you had to take off the back and touch pins 1 and 40 of the CPU with a jumper cable. As electrolytic capacitors age, the voltage curve changes, and one day your reset signal just doesn't. The HackJunk version borrows a page from later Acorn machines and uses a 555 timer for a crisp, reliable reset pulse, because if your computer does not start reliably, everything else is just a very complicated paperweight. Next up, RAM. The original Atom could require up to 24 separate 2114 memory ICs. 24! And while 24 ICs filled up the available sockets, it didn't even fill the memory map, and third-party daughter boards were available to extend the RAM further. The 2114, because in the 80s, 4 kilobits was apparently more than anyone would ever need. That's not a memory expansion, that's a tile mosaic. The HackJunk version replaces all of that with one 62-256 for video memory and two 62-256 for main memory. That's fewer chips, less heat, less current draw, easier troubleshooting, and far more capacity. For ROMs, the original Acorn Atom used two 4K ROMs and one 8K ROM containing the OS, BASIC, and Toolkit. The HackJunk board replaces all of that with the single 27256 EEPROM. It's bank switchable, so you can hold two versions of the operating system or alternative software builds. It's cleaner, simpler, and much easier to keep updated. For video out, the original Atom gave you RF, and that was it. If you wanted composite, you had to solder a wire onto PL4 and hope for the best. The HackJunk board includes RF out, composite out, and it also includes Hoglet's brilliant video noise killer circuit, which cleans up the picture dramatically. There's also been some improvements in the buffering of signals. The old Atom used some very rare chips for its peripheral buffering. It used two 81LS95 and one 8304. These are now about as easy to obtain as a unicorn that knows Fortran. Whilst it made sense at the time to use these chips, there are now modern 74 series equivalents that are available. So HackJunk replaces them with 74 LS 244 and 245s, modern, equivalent, reliable, and fully compatible. So the HackJunk Atom is not just a clone, it's a respectful modernization. Still true to the original design, but without the self-destructing voltage regulators, upside-down ICs, unreliable reset circuit, or 24-chip RAM mosaics. Well, I do hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if you like the idea of watching a build of an Atom, please do press the like and subscribe buttons, because in the next video we'll actually start assembling the board. We'll start with the power and passive components and check each subsystem as we go. Because from little acorns apparently come slightly less flammable acorn atoms. So thank you very much for watching Earie's 8-Bit Workshop, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.